everyone, this is Miss Siddiqui here. This is the video for the Scottsboro Boys playlist for the To Kill a Mockingbird Introduction SDL. Make sure you have out your packet to go with this video, and make sure you answer the questions in the Scottsboro Boys section when you engage with the other resources in this playlist. So, the Scottsboro Boys connects to Kill a Mockingbird because it was a true historical event that occurred in the 30s, which is when To Kill a Mockingbird occurred, but it also occurred in 1931 when Harper Lee was about 5 years old, and she's grown up knowing about this case and aware of it as a kind of a standout during that era. So she was only 5 years old when this happened, and the Scottsboro Boys were 9 black men who were accused of raping 2 white women. And this was an alleged incident that occurred after a fight between black and white men while they were, quote, riding the rails looking for work. Most of the white men were thrown off the train, and when the train arrived in Paint Rock, Alabama, everyone who was left was arrested for vagrancy. The 2 women who were on board this train, one of whom was a known prostitute, the other a minor, were also accused of violating the Mann Act, which forbade the transportation of minors across state lines for a criminal act, including prostitution. After exiting the train, the women immediately accused all 9 black men who were on the train of rape. The trial of the 9 black men, one of whom was only 12 years old, began 12 days after their arrest on April 6th in 1931 and lasted 3 days. 8 of the 9 men were given death sentences, despite the fact that the defense attorney pointed out that one of the men was blind, the other 2 elderly and crippled to commit the crime, another underage, and that they were not even in the same rail car. Appeals would continue for nearly 2 years. Then, in November of 1932, the United States Supreme Court ordered new trials for the men, stating inadequate counsel and poor representation. In March of 1933, new trials began and included the testimony of 2 doctors who refuted the likelihood that a rape occurred. Ruby Bates, one of the accusers, retraction of the accusation, and you're going to read her statement during this playlist, and a harsh scrutiny of the life of Victoria Price, the other accuser, the other white female accuser. So despite the evidence, defendants Charlie Weems and Hayward Patterson were again found guilty and given the death penalty. But in a surprising and unfavorable turn of events, however, Judge James Horton overturned the conviction and ordered a new trial. Despite the judge's decision, defendant Clarence Norrance was also convicted and given the death sentence in a subsequent trial. But then finally, in 1935, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the convictions, stating that the defendants were not given a jury of their peers, in this case African Americans, and that the white jury had discriminated against them. The Scottsboro Boys, as they came to be called, were tried and convicted for a crime that never happened. To Kill a Mockingbird is loosely based on this trial and the discrimination and racism against blacks who were convicted without evidence or a fair trial. So keep this trial in mind as we encounter the trial that is portrayed in To Kill a Mockingbird. 2 other trials, like the Scottsboro Boys trials, that are said to have influenced Lee in writing To Kill a Mockingbird, are the trial of Walter Lett and the murder of Emmett Till. So in the trial of Walter Lett, an African-American man named Walter Lett was accused of raping a white woman, Naomi Lowry. And what happened in this case, which occurred in 1933 in Lee's hometown, is that Lett was accused of this rape, and during the time that he was undergoing his trial, he was facing the threat of lynch mobs, and so he was kept in very, very protective custody so that he wouldn't be lynched by a white mob, which was enraged by the idea of a black man allegedly raping a white woman. But what happened in this trial is that after an extremely brief trial in which Lett pled not guilty, he was then set for execution not even a year later, after the trial happened. But his death sentence eventually was repealed and he was given life in prison instead. But he died in prison due to tuberculosis, and some argue it's because of the poor conditions of the prison that led to his poor health in prison. So this trial might have influenced Harper Lee's portrayal of how African Americans were held in custody during their trials, and how they were treated in prison and how they were treated in the courtroom. Another trial that might have influenced Harper Lee was the handling of the murder of Emmett Till. So the murder of Emmett Till took place in 1955, and Emmett Till was a 14-year-old African-American boy who was from Chicago, so he wasn't used to the Jim Crow South and the segregated South and kind of the norms of behavior there. So what happened, allegedly, is that Emmett whistled at a white woman in a grocery store in Mississippi, and this was against the law in Mississippi, which Till was unaware of because he was from Chicago. And so what happened is that Till was dragged out of his bed that day, beaten, and then shot to death for whistling at this white woman in the store. What happened in this trial is that his killers were acquitted by an all-white Southern jury, and a few months later the killers gave detailed descriptions of how and why they killed Till after the trial ended. So one of the stories that you're going to read in this playlist talks about the slaying of Emmett Till. And so I want you to think about the murder of Emmett Till and that trial and the Scottsboro Boys trials when you begin your reading of the trial in To Kill a Mockingbird. Thanks for watching. Make sure you complete the playlist and engage with the other resources in this set.